that conduces to the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is what a constitution must be. And having set the objective of the constitution, you then frame a constitution to achieve that objective.
Because we really do have a race problem. Those divisions are real. We see it in our politics, we see it in our trade union. We see that they take the divisions with them. Look at where people live in this US. You have enclaves in the Bronx and in Richmond Hill and in Brooklyn. They're taking the division with them.
Women are dying in the streets, and we have a government pontificating running around campaigning for women's vote. No women should vote in this election coming up unless there is something done to the legislation as Magistrate Kim is advocating.
That voices like ours that are not in the political trench fighting it out, voices like ours should become stronger. One of the things about the Caribbean is that we have never had one discourse. Bass will know the days of the New World and the Old World and the radical left and so on. What we had was this concourse of ideas, which I think in the early days of independence pushed us in a certain direction. We have got to move back to that point of having these multiple discourses.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Can, and welcome to this edition of Globespan 24x7. I am your moderator for this evening's program, and as you can see, our topic for tonight is youths and Guyana's political climate. Now, joining me this evening to discuss this topic and a wide range of other issues that are prevalent in Guyana, I have with me Attorney at Law, Mr. James Bond, and also Attorney at Law, Ms. Lachmi Rahamant, and activist and founder of a non-governmental organization, Guyana, Ms. Melissa Atwell. Now, the president moments ago announced that a possible date for election is March 2nd. We have a video clip of the president making that announcement. We're going to play that, and then when we come back, my panelists will be weighing in on that announcement and other topics. Let's take a look.
Guyanese, the government, since the passage of the no-confidence motion in the National Assembly on the 21st of December 2018, has respected the decisions of the courts and upheld the Constitution. We challenged the validity of the no-confidence motion and defended the challenge to the constitutionality of the appointment of the chairman of the Elections Commission. The legal processes were neither frivolous nor aimed at delaying the consequences of the no-confidence motion. They sought to clarify and interpret the Constitution and to ensure that general and regional elections would be conducted on the basis of a credible list. I have complied with the rulings of the courts, upheld the Constitution of Guyana, and respected the National Assembly at all times. I engaged the Election Commission from February 2019 repeatedly. I insisted that credible elections be held at the earliest possible time. Credible elections are essential to representative democracy. Guyanese, the chairman of the Elections Commission, Justice Claudette Singh, wrote me last Thursday, the 19th of September 2019, indicating that, and I quote, the Guyana Elections Commission will be able to deliver credible elections by the end of February 2020. I convened a meeting of available cabinet ministers that very day, within hours of receiving her advice, to discuss the timeline provided to me by the chairman. A second meeting of the full cabinet was held yesterday, the 24th of September 2019, when all members accepted the advice provided by the chairman of the Elections Commission. Cabinet ministers also benefited from the advice of Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Basil Williams, and were guided by the need to adhere scrupulously to the advice of the Elections Commission. I met Chairman of the Elections Commission, Justice Singh, this afternoon, Wednesday the 25th of September, when she discussed the statutory timelines for the forthcoming general and regional elections. Guyanese. Guyana will observe its 50th anniversary as a republic on Sunday, the 23rd of February 2020. The following day, the 24th of February 2020, will be a national holiday. I am pleased to announce that after discussions with the chairman of the Elections Commission and with my cabinet, the earliest possible date for the holding of general and regional elections will be on Monday, the 2nd of March 2020. The Constitution states, notwithstanding its defeat, the government shall remain in office and shall hold an election within 3 months or such longer period as the National Assembly shall, by resolution supported by not less than 2/3 of the votes of all the elected members of the National Assembly, determine, and shall resign after the President takes the oath of office following the election. The extension of a period beyond 3 months for the holding of an election is related to the Elections Commission's readiness to hold elections. The government of Guyana must, as a consequence, return to the National Assembly to request an extension. The National Assembly reconvenes on the 10th of October 2019. The President is required to both dissolve Parliament as provided for in the Constitution and the 10 regional democratic councils, also as provided for in the Constitution. The Constitution again states, an election of members of the National Assembly shall be held on such a day within 3 months after every dissolution of Parliament, as the President shall appoint by proclamation. The Constitution states further that the President may, at any time by proclamation, dissolve Parliament. The Constitution provides that elections of members of regional democratic councils shall be held and the council shall be dissolved at such times as, subject to paragraph 3, the President may appoint by proclamation. Guyanese can now look to the Elections Commission to conduct credible elections within the time frame prescribed. Guyanese, we are on the right path to preserve our precious parliamentary democracy. Thank you, and may God continue to bless Guyana.
Thank you for staying with us. As I said, my name is Tracy Can. I'm your moderator for this evening's program, and I'm joined by attorneys at law, Mr. James Bond and Ms. Lashmi Rahman, and activist Melissa Atwell. There you were looking at President David Granger making the announcement that the earliest possible date for elections is March 2nd. Now, welcome everyone, and thank you for being on the show this evening.
Hi, good evening, Tracy. Good evening, listeners, and thanks for having us.
All right, so it is important that we know the president said the earliest possible date, because there seems to be some confusion that elections will be held on March 2nd. We just listened to the president speaking, and he said that is the earliest possible date. Can you all weigh in on this announcement? What are your thoughts?
Should I go first? Should you go first, James? Lashmi, should you go first? All right, All
right, Melissa, you go ahead, and then we'll have the attorneys weigh in.
All right, let me just get something perfectly clear. So I heard he mentioned something about now going back to Parliament and asking the opposition for an extended time before he dissolves he decides to dissolve Parliament.
Yes, that's
I believe.
Go ahead.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, James.
He was reciting what is stated in the Constitution at Article 1067, which 1067 gave a timeline within which elections ought to be held upon the passage of a no confidence motion, which is 3 months. But the Constitution,
But
made provision for Parliament.
Not cutting you, Lachmi. I'm just trying to honor, which was 3 months, right? Which in that election was, which was supposed to be the 21st after the no confidence motion, and then the CCJ initially reset the clock, and then a date was given for September the 18th.
All right, so let's just take a pin.
Mm-hmm.
What His Excellency was doing was actually reciting what is stated in the Constitution at Article 106.7. So what 106.7, the writers of the Constitution, the framers did, was that they placed in it a mechanism where within that 3 months, after the passage of a no confidence motion, if elections was not possible within that time, you could go to Parliament and with a 2/3 majority, extend the time, extend it beyond the 3 months within which elections should be held.
But
so that
I just want to get
So
just
he's
want
now
to get
looking
your
to go to Parliament
reaction.
and extend that time.
Well, first of all, before we delve into it, we're going to unpack all of these issues. But what are your general thoughts, James? What are your thoughts on this announcement?
I'm enthused. Thank you, Ms. Khan. I'm really enthused with this announcement. And I must say from the onset that the president, with his deliberation, with his logical thinking, with his astute leadership, he has averted so many crises in Guyana. I think about when we had first heard about the passage of no confidence motion, persons were pressuring the president to name an election date without consulting GCOM, without understanding where GCOM was in terms of his readiness and preparedness. And he decided to ensure that at all times, as he mentioned, he not only followed the Constitution, but at all times he ensured that the institutions, and the institution, particularly GCOM, who has the remit and power to administer elections in Guyana, they were at all times in control of the process. And I think ensuring that GCOM was not interfered with by the executive, that is important. So this is the culmination of a series of brilliant moves by the president and brilliant leadership by the president that has brought us to this place where now even the opposition leader is saying, yes, I'm ready to accept February 2020. I'm willing to accept GCOM's latest position on when it will be ready. And I believe when they head to the National Assembly, just to clarify that with Ms. Atwell, the government is not going to ask the opposition to extend Parliament. Under 106.7, the opposition, the entire National Assembly, it states very clearly there, as mentioned by Mr. Hammett, it says the members of the National Assembly determine, the National Assembly shall by resolution. That is the entire National Assembly. It did not say the government side of the National Assembly or the opposition side. And it did not say may. It gives a particular instruction to the National Assembly sitting as a committee of the whole to extend the date to a feasible one wherewith we could hold elections.
Where the fair elections can be held. Understand?
Mr. Hammond, your thoughts on the president's announcement?
Well, we've listened to the video together, and I am of the view that a specific date has not as yet been called when elections will be held. I think from what I heard, and I would be corrected, but it is the earliest possible date that His Excellency has identified. So I am interpreting that to mean that it could be held as early as March 2nd, or it could be a date beyond then. However, my view on the setting of the elections date that has taken us down a course that is beyond September 18th, I'm of the view that we are not in compliance with the order of the CCJ. The ruling of the CCJ was very clear. The ruling says that the CCJ did not need to interpret for us sections 106.6 and 106.7. I'm reading from paragraph 5 of the said ruling, which says that their meanings are clear, and it is the responsibility of the constitutional actors of Guyana to honor them. Upon the passage of the no confidence motion, the article requires, first of all, the resignation of cabinet, including the president. The article goes on to say that notwithstanding the resignation, the government shall remain in office and an election shall be held within 3 months or such period as the National Assembly shall by resolution supported by no less than 2/3 of the votes of the all elected members of the National Assembly determine. Now, I hope you bear with me for a few minutes, because in this same ruling of the CCJ, they go on to say that the court must assume that all these bodies will exercise their responsibilities with integrity and in keeping with the unambiguous provisions of the Constitution, bearing in mind that the no confidence motion was validly passed on the 21st of December 2018. Now, the reason why I painstakingly read through what the CCJ said is that the CCJ is our highest appellate court. These matters went to the CCJ for interpretation of this particular section, basically telling us what it means and what was the effect of the no confidence motion. My position remains that the CCJ is telling us that the timelines are set in the Constitution and all actors, the government and GCOM. GCOM was also bound to abide by the provisions of the Constitution. This was noted in the CCJ's decision. The fact that GCOM announced that the earliest they will be ready for the elections in February, at the end of February 2020, they are clearly in breach of the constitutional provision. Okay. And if you read the CCJ decision, it clearly states that all the parties which they identified as the president, the National Assembly, and implicitly in GCOM, they are saying that all these actors must abide by the constitutional timeline. Yeah. We are way outside the timeline if we are looking at the earliest possible elections date being March 2nd. The fact is, I believe we are in a constitutional crisis.
All right.
Lakshmi, I understand, right? I understand everything.
Melissa, you were shaking your head in disagreement with Ms. Raham and your
views. Not really in disagreement. I understand completely what you're saying, but I just want to ask this question. You said that GCOM, but isn't okay, so we have this body that is responsible for elections, right? So if GCOM is saying to us that they are not able and ready to provide or to perform free and fair election until March or February next year, this is the body that is responsible for giving us free and fair, and they're saying to us, hey, yes, we understand that many of us are of the view that the government right now is unconstitutional. But if GCOM is saying to us that we are not ready to provide, we are not ready to give free and fair election until February next year, this body that is responsible for election is saying, hey, we are not ready for a fair, we are not ready, we don't have the resources, we are not equipped to give a free and fair elections until next year, February. What is the government, what is this administration then to do if this body is saying to them that, hey, we are not ready until February next year?
Well, okay. Point taken, Melissa. I still am to get your reaction as a young person. All of this, granted, some are of the view that we're in a constitutional crisis. You're of the view that GCOM is not ready. The president.
I am of yes, Tracy. I am of
now on this announcement, though.
I'm glad that the president finally set a date, because that is what everybody was pushing for. That is what the opposition was protesting for. He needed to set a date for election. And I just before I came online with you, Tracy, I saw that he said the earliest. But like Lakshmi said, he says that the earliest date they can be election is the 2nd of March. He still didn't say elections is on the 2nd of March.
A date has not been announced.
A date still have not not been set,
Yes.
have not been announced. So if elections can be before March, it can be after March. We don't know, but that is the earliest date that he has given to us. So he's basically saying that he and the opposition now have to go back to the draw table and negotiate again on a date. And so it's kind of like it's a toll, because you kind of have the Guyanese. Yes, so we are in a political crisis right now. I would say that, because you kind of have us like on a back and forth. Are we going to have elections? We're not going to have elections. We had to sit through the whole CCJ ruling. We had to wait 21st. We passed the 21st of March. CCJ kind of extended that time to the 18th of September. We are past the 18th of September. He was saying that he was waiting on GCOM to proclaim a time, or to give them a time. GCOM gave them a time of the earliest of February. Now he comes out and he says, the earliest date is the 2nd of March, but he still did not say, well, elections is on the 2nd of March.
Okay, so I
want
for James to weigh in, because this is a process. Him making this announcement, there are a number of things that will now have to take effect. James, can you walk us through a little bit of what's next? What does this mean for us? Where do we go from here?
All right, I must try to, coming last, I will have the task of probably commenting very briefly on what the two previous commentators said. First and foremost, I disagree with my colleague, Mr. Hamad, in the timelines that is set. The CCJ never set a timeline. And to say that the CCJ set September 18th as the date for the holding of an election is false. The CCJ recognized that the date that the no confidence motion was passed, 3 months after that, would have been the date that the elections should have been held. They did not state that the election should be held in June, July, August, September, October. Furthermore, this case went back to the Chief Justice, Justice George, who clearly stated that there's no date. So to now say that September 18th was the day for the holding of national elections in Guyana is false. There's no judgment or ruling that says September 18th. If that is the case, I would like to see that. The other thing too is elections don't just happen like that. And Guyanese, we've exercised tremendous patience, except the opposition. Guyanese have exercised tremendous patience. I must commend Guyanese for exercising patience during this time. These things take a particular process, a particular course. The president cannot dissolve parliament. You see, to call an election, it means the president has to first dissolve parliament. Now, the parliament cannot be dissolved. Why parliament cannot be dissolved at this moment? There is still funding that GCOM may need. There are still resources that GCOM may need. And parliament is the only body in terms of the Appropriations Act who could dispense those funds. And so we have to go back to the National Assembly. That's why the president says our parliamentary democracy, commented on that particularly, because the president is not a person who seems to uses or wields the powers of the executive capriciously. I repeat, the president does not wield the powers of the executive capriciously and selfishly. The president still believes in consensualism. He still believes that we must always go to the opposition, go to the National Assembly, consult with our institutions that protect our democracy, and then arrive at a decision. There's absolutely no one who could fault that kind of leadership. So we have
James, okay. Let me just get to the point. What everybody basically. I mean, you and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not here to debate the back and forth with the legal issues. I leave that to you, Lakshmi. But here's what I think everybody wants to know: what is it going to take for the government and the opposition to set a date for election, a date that we can look forward to, that they can say, hey, elections is on the 1st of March. What will it take?
I think that's what James is explaining the process. So continue, James.
Yes. The first thing that the president and the government needs to do is reconvene. They will reconvene Parliament. As I said, the opposition leader has agreed for the timeline set by GCOM. He has agreed. So the date could never be after March 2nd. The government is saying here, given the parameters of the holidays and whatever the case is, the earliest date is the 2nd of March. That is that is 2 days after the ending of February that is prescribed by GCOM's chairman. GCOM's chairman says they're ready by the end of February. And 2 days thereafter, the president says, look, that is the earliest date. That is true, that's a Monday. And so that is, if you look at the calendar itself, you'll understand and be willing to accept that that is the best day for the election. He did not say the 10th of March or the 17th of March. So the opposition leader has indicated his acceptance of GCOM's timeline. And he says he trusted the decisions of the chairman of GCOM. So I believe when we go back to this, the National Assembly, it's time for the opposition leader and the opposition to be mature and says here, we are back in the National Assembly, we agree on this data that the government has proposed, and we're willing to work. And I must say that this has been a learning experience for us. And Ms. Rahamat and myself, who are both lawyers, the law that was set out here would serve generations to come. And I repeat, if it were not for the astute leadership of His Excellency, we would not have been this well learned or knowledgeable of the challenges that we will face, and we will not face these challenges again.
Ms. Rahamat, how do you respond?
Be permitted to just answer, just make a few comments on what my colleague, Mr. Bond, has stated. Now, first and foremost, the decision of the CCJ specifically said that we had an obligation. The court must assume that all the bodies will exercise their responsibilities with integrity in keeping with the unambiguous provisions of the Constitution. Now, I am going back to the Constitution because as a law student in first year at University of Guyana, constitutional law tells us that this Constitution is the supreme law of Guyana. I find it difficult that we are now looking at a date beyond 3 months from the passage of the no confidence, and we are all saying, or we're all of the opinion that, okay, we should be grateful that a date or the earliest possible date has been given. We still have the constitutional issue to deal with, that all the timelines and all the dates that have been given by the authorities and the relevant bodies referred to in the CCJ decision go way beyond the 3 months, which is not provided for in the Constitution. Where in the Constitution can Parliament convene 3 months after the 3 months of the passage of the no confidence motion? Where is that provided for? How can we operate outside the four corners of our Constitution and operate as though nothing is wrong? And I vividly remember when one of the attorneys was presenting his case before the CCJ, he was begging the CCJ to return our Constitution to its rightful place. Right now, as it is, GCOM is not complying with the timeline set by the Constitution. And given the earliest possible date as March 2nd, that is in breach of our Constitution. But I feel that most Guyanese, and I meet people every day on the road, they just want an election date to be set because our country has been operating in limbo. And I feel as though a lot of people will be grateful that a date is in the near future being set. But how do we, as a nation, how is history going to judge us? How is history going to look back at the events that have unfolded since the 21st of December 2018 and judge us? I do not think history will be kind to us, because what is happening right now in our country is happening outside of the four corners of our Constitution. And the only word to describe it is unconstitutional. And Article 8 of our Constitution says any law that is inconsistent with our Constitution, any other law, it is null and void. Anything outside of the provisions of the Constitution is null and void and of no legal effect. But we have an entire nation that is waiting on a proclamation to be issued by the president when elections will be held. And I am sorry, Mr. Bond and other persons listening, but I do not and have not heard an exact date, so I am still very much uncomfortable as to when elections will be held.
So you don't believe in this process that the president spoke about reconvening parliament, and for that reason, that would be one of the reasons. What if GCOM needs more funding? So what do we do now, Mr. Hammond, in your view?
GCOM had already stated what they needed, and if I am not incorrect, I believe that Parliament convened without the opposition being present, and I think a motion was passed to release more funding to GCOM. I don't have the details of the amounts, but I believe at that time, GCOM had submitted an amount that was required to have elections in the earliest possible time, and that amount was passed. I believe that nothing has been disclosed to the nation, either by a statement from GCOM or any of the GCOM commissioners, either on the government side or on the opposition side, that has disclosed to the press, to the Guyanese citizens, that GCOM needs any more funding to meet the deadline that they have given the president in their recent publication, which is the end of February. Nothing was stated about more funding. So I don't know, is it that we are waiting on the possibility that they might need more funding? Isn't it kind of ridiculous or strange to say that they may need more funding to get them to a deadline that they have already given us, and they haven't disclosed that? Something seems a bit wrong there.
But let me just say this, Lachmi. So the government had provided GCOM with several billions of dollars early in the year to conduct house-to-house registration. Now that house-to-house registration has been aborted. Shouldn't GCOM have money left? And if they don't have, shouldn't they have had money left since that house-to-house registration have now been aborted?
No, Melissa, let's not get confused. I believe that in the budget before the no confidence motion was passed, I think it was $3 or $4 billion were already released for the house-to-house registration. And then I believe after the passage of the no confidence motion, Parliament was convened, the opposition was absent, and I believe Mr. Bond may assist us with this, but there was, based on my recollection of the events, another motion moved to provide more funding for GCOM. And I believe that went straight through.
Yes, so, Mr. Bond. Go ahead, Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hammond, sorry, she wasn't finished. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just find it hard to believe that GCOM was able to give us a timeline, albeit far outside of the constitutional timeline, to February 2020, the end of February 2020, and then give us that timeline if they needed more funding. It is just irreconcilable. I believe that.
Do you think they need more funding, or the process to get us to election requires that time? Because I'm seeing that claims on objective don't start until October 1st.
Well, you see, they set their timelines. As far as I'm aware from what was released in the press, GCOM had several timelines that they were looking at to take them to elections as early as possible. And I am of the view that if any of the timelines required additional funding, then that ought to have been disclosed to Guyanese, because all Guyanese are being affected by what is happening. And I do not know where suddenly the concern is we need to return to Parliament. We cannot dissolve Parliament as yet, because we may need to provide more funding for
GCOM.
So I find it strange, and I feel that if GCOM needs more money, they need to explain to every Guyanese why they did not tell us that when they said February 2020.
Okay. Mr. Bond.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much. I want to make it very clear that any monies that constitutional agencies receive, these amounts of monies must be publicized. must be gazetted for. That's necessary, especially GCOM, who receives this money through the National Assembly. So indeed, GCOM every year GCOM is given draws down from the consolidated fund, billions of dollars. Its drawdown for the year 2019 was $5.4 billion. That is without an election. That is what GCOM uses to pay staff to do their work, $5.4 billion. To assist in the preparations of elections, I believe it was in June, GCOM was given $3.5 billion just to assist or to commence its preparations. GCOM asked for $3.5 billion. That is not the money could never be the amount of money to conduct in elections. Cards have to be printed. You have to deal with the fingerprints. So many things, training of persons to the 10 administrative regions. So no, GCOM has received no further funding from the National Assembly. So Mr. Hammond goes
other than the funding to start the house registration, they haven't received any other funding as it relates to the election.
No funding they've received. So now we have.
If I may step in, George, and James, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but my recollection of that request for the additional funding, they never said that was just part of what they need. They said that is what they needed.
That is very incorrect, Council. Council, may I just say that you're incorrect there. That money is the $3.5 billion. The $3.5 billion, that's a specific amount given to GCOM, was to assist it in its preparations for the elections. It was not to be the total sum. And elections cost billions of dollars.
Then why
billions of dollars? So $3.5 billion was just to commence the process. If I may continue now. So we are in a position where the chairman of the Elections Commission just recently stated, and she said in our address, or our letter to the president and a letter to the press, that look, I will not be giving the full schedule of GCOM, the full work plan of GCOM. So we have not seen that as yet, but that has been prepared. It's just for, and I thank again the Guyanese people for their patience. Things must be done in its rightful order. GCOM will come and say to conduct these entire elections, it will cost X amount of dollars, and we'll make that drawdown from the consolidated fund. So there's nothing strange about that. And again, it seems that there's a lot of anxieties, and I can understand why there are anxieties. But the facts are the facts. GCOM has received no further funding. GCOM has begun a process. I think of that amount, a few $100 million. Imagine a few $100 million were expended already from that amount. And again, it's a very expensive process to run elections. Printing of ballot paper, you name it. It's very expensive. And we have to go to Parliament to get those monies. Those monies are not going to be falling from the sky. So we have to follow the right process. We have to do the correct things. And again, we will reach a result that every single Guyanese can be proud of. Mr. Hammond stated that the Constitution, anything that goes outside the Constitution is null and void, etc. I could never fault Mr. Hammond for those sentiments. But I want to remind my erstwhile colleague, a colleague who I respect and admire, is that the Constitution is a life form. It's a living organism. The Constitution presides over the lives of excess of 700,000 persons. And the Constitution cannot intend absurdities, and the Constitution could not intend chaos and confusion. So in every reading of the Constitution, whether you want to ascribe it its literal meaning, you still have to give the power and autonomy to the institutions to operate, and allow them to operate in a way that they will not bring an absurdity. If GCOM, for example, is the body who is charged with holding of elections, and I would not go back to this point. GCOM is the body empowered by Article 61, 161, 162, etc., to run and conduct and administer elections in Guyana. The executive, separate arm of government, cannot, in any which way, form the very same constitution that my learned friend wants to follow rigidly. She must respect and must acknowledge that the executive, the president, cannot instruct GCOM and say, I want an election by this date or that date. It is GCOM who must give the president, as in this case, a timeline for the holding of elections, and the president has complied, and then we will go to elections. Because if these elections, for example, were held just after, with Justice James Patterson as the chairman. You know what the opposition may say if they lose? Elections were rigged, Mr. Patterson was there. There's so many variables we could put in there. We do not want to hastily rush into elections. Elections must be credible. Elections must be credible. Elections must be free. They must be fair to all. No one could say at this stage that the opposition is not better informed, is not going to be better prepared for elections. No one could say the government is not better informed, could not be better prepared for the elections. So we're all going into the election with a particular chairman that we all wanted and a time frame that even the opposition leader says, I will accept that time frame.
Okay.
What I am saying, and Ms. Khan, I would just ask you a few minutes to address this. When the CCJ was giving its ruling, the CCJ, even during the submissions by counsel who then represented GCOM, painstakingly tried to explain to the counsel for GCOM that the Constitution required that GCOM be ready for elections in accordance with the constitutional timeline. Ask yourselves this question. Why would the budget for GCOM, according to my colleague there, every year be $5-something billion? Is it not to ensure that they are ready in the event that the no confidence motion triggers elections in 3 months? Let us not forget that after the no confidence motion was passed, the PR for GCOM issued a statement that they're ready for elections anytime. That position changed. When that position changed, you then had the lawyer, the in-house attorney for GCOM, a young attorney by the name of Ms. Dazzle, and we all saw her give a written opinion to GCOM that they didn't need to go to the house registration. These things, we have gone past these things, yes. But my position is that GCOM is in breach of the Constitution. GCOM had a mandate according to our Constitution to be ready for elections in the event that a no confidence motion was triggered. They, as far as I'm aware, are in breach of the Constitution. And what is happening right now, with all due respect, Guyanese, every single Guyanese, they are just waiting for the elections date to be called. And now, even on today's date, we don't have that date. We have the earliest possible date. December 21st, 2019 will be 1 year since the passage of the no confidence motion. The framers of our Constitution, which is the supreme law of our land, could never have envisaged that the actors responsible for carrying out their duties according to the Constitution would ever have allowed something like this to happen.
All right, so we've touched, because of the president's announcement, I had so many other questions. Time is running out on us, and we are going to be bringing in some other political analysts as well to weigh in on the announcement. We've gone back and forth about what could have been, what was wrong, and all of that. Where do we go from here? We are the future of Guyana, of our beautiful land. So where do we go from here? Where do you want for us to go from here? Mr. Bond, you can go first. Instead of focusing on what was wrong, what could have been done, should have been done.
I like that approach. I love that approach. I believe, and that has always been me. I see the past is supposed to teach us, and as I'm saying, this was a learning experience for everyone, and now we could actually move forward. As I see it going forward, it is time for the parties, the individual parties who are contesting the elections. I'm sure they'll be getting their house in order. I could tell you very much that the APNUFC has been ready for elections. I'm one I like this, I'm an election animal. I come alive with elections. I've already stopped going to court for a number of cases because I'm always doing preparing for the elections, doing fundraisers, working the streets. Tomorrow I'll be at the walkabout straight down Regent Street. This is me, and this is how our party, a mass-based party, is always mobilized and ready for an election. So I believe this is a great opportunity for us now, moving forward to do what we have always done, or preach our message of inclusivity, preach our message of shared governance. As you know, we're a party of 6 diverse parties, APNUFC coalition. That's a government of 6 diverse parties from Guyanese from all walks of life. We do not believe in the winner-take-all system as the People's Progressive Party Civic does. And we have the best candidate, David Arthur Granger, for president. Who could
James,
talk?
James, I'm not here. I'm just gonna just something that you said. You said that the APNU coalition you guys are always ready. You guys have always been ready for election. You're always in election mood. And I just want to say, I think if that was the case, then you guys should have gone to election since the no confidence vote was passed. If you guys were always in election mood, then should have just avoided this whole political crisis that we're now in and just went ahead and went right into election after the no confidence motion.
Well, Ms. Southwell, you would know that in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Manning thought he had the full confidence, went into elections and lost. So elections is not something that you take for granted. As a politician, you were given 5 years with a mandate to govern the country. 5 years. An act of treachery by Charan Das would have brought in no confidence motion.
An act of treachery.
So this wasn't so. James, I'm going to ask you something. So in no way. I'm just asking the question that we just want, that I think many Guyanese want to know. So this is it. This was in no way this administration trying to drag out the time for election and trying to push in that 5 years.
No, ma'am. I
Because,
can tell you this
because they're very
shortly.
close to the 5 year. Actually, we're going to election.
Exactly. So you guys basically had the full 5 year term.
But let Mr. James respond. Was this a tactic by the government to drag the time out?
I'm the only person being interrupted.
I'm sorry, James. Don't get me wrong. I don't want you. Let me just make this perfectly clear. I am not affiliated with no political party, the APNU coalition, the PPP. I'm just asking the questions that I think it's fair to say that every Guyanese wants to know. That youth wants answers to. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to.
Let's allow Mr. James. Ladies. I think Mr. James feels ganged up on.
James, you feel attacked.
Yes. So let's allow him to speak. It's him alone.
Because of the local government results. Was that part of the not going to elections within the 3 months, even though you were saying they were ready?
I didn't hear your question, Lafi. Forgive me.
I was saying that there are certain opinions out there that one of the reasons for the delay was because of the results from the local government election.
No, again, I say this here, if I may, without interruption.
Without interruption this time, ladies.
All right. No interruptions for me. Sorry.
Yeah, let me just be very, very clear here, is that as a political party that's been since 1950-55, we'll be celebrating 62 years, 57, sorry, we'll be celebrating 62 years as a political party in Linden come October 5th. So this is not a party that has been around yesterday. And we are always, I could tell you, we're always ready for an election. Now, the issue of delay has never crossed our minds. The reason being this: there were and had to be a challenge to the no confidence motion. Any government, any shrewd government, any astute government would challenge it. Whether or not you think you could win an election or not, you will challenge it.
The people didn't challenge it.
I don't think any government should take that no confidence motion lying down like that. I mean, the President Donald Ramatar, he ran from it and ended up being run out of office by the electorate. So we were, since elections were called in 2015 and we won those elections, we're always being ready for a next election. We'll be ready when 2020 comes. However, moving forward, as I was saying, we have the best candidate. It's President David Arthur Granger, a man of impeccable character, a man who is eminently qualified. I think the People's Progressive Party Civic has Mr. Irfan Ali, who has 19 charges embracing him in the courts, who is not been able to provide certain certificates to verify his qualifications. And we do not see this as
But
a
of course,
at
he's
least
entitled
affront
to.
intelligence.
Let's
James,
allow him to finish. He's
Again,
almost
James,
there. He's almost
I have
there.
no, I have no, I have no,
You ladies promise not to
I
interrupt
believe that-
Mr. Bond. Let's
I don't
allow
think
him,
I'll be allowed.
I
ladies.
believe that President.
Let's allow him
Every
to
time we get
finish.
Irfan Ali,
Let's allow him to finish.
every time we get to Irfan Ali, I'm being
Our
stopped.
Let's allow him to finish. Go ahead, Mr. Bond.
No, every time I get to Irfan Ali, every time I get to say that Mr. Irfan Ali, he's not qualified to be president of this country. Let's be honest, young people know it. He's not qualified to be president of this country. And we need to move forward with people who are honest, people who could stand on the world stage and represent us. His Excellency has been doing that quite well. The very same president that the opposition be claiming that it is illegal and unconstitutional, the very same president, the foreign emissaries, they're coming to him to present their credentials. It's the very same president who they're asking to name in elections, who they're saying is unconstitutional, is illegal. To me, that makes no sense. So we support this government, and I could guarantee that come 2020, we will win again. And that's my
James, I must agree with you something in terms of credibility and integrity. I must agree that the president have those qualities. I don't know if I can say the same about his ministers, but I guess that's another topic.
But Melissa, as a young person, where do we go from here?
To elections.
But generally, what do you want to see for Guyana? You're very we're going to elections. We're going to elections.
I want to see. We're going to election. When you say what do I want to see for Guyana, what exactly are you asking? Like, what do I want to see?
Generally, what do you want to see for the future of our country?
Oh, Tracy, you know I'm very vocal about so many issues online, about so many issues that are facing our young people, our employees being taken advantage of, domestic violence is on the increase. I want to see those ministers that are in government come out the office, come out your fancy office, come out your AC. I need them to see them doing the work, not just when it's election time. Then we have them running helter-skelter here, to visiting this location, visiting that location, and then for the rest of the year we don't see or we don't hear anything about you unless it's a photo op or you're handing over something or you're giving over something. So I must say, when I speak for the youth, I think we as young people that voted for this current administration, we were hoping or we were expecting to see to hear more from our ministers, to see them more involved. I take it that this government sometimes don't always listen to the youths. You have so many young, brilliant minds and voices out there that have been voicing their opinion, that have been giving their opinion, that have been giving their insights as to how they would like to see the country going forward. But they continue to be ignored.
Ms. Rahman, where do we go from here?
Well, I like your approach to end the program. We should look and we should have suggestions for solutions and possible recommendations for an outcome that will benefit all Guyanese. Now, as a young person, one of the reasons why I accepted your invitation to come on this forum was because I feel as though this fragile thing called democracy in our beautiful country has been threatened. I cannot sit idly by and allow international countries and bodies to view us as a pariah state. But we cannot defend their views of us because the actions of the relevant bodies are outside of our constitution. It's a travesty. It makes me sad, not only as an attorney who understands the legal ramifications of this uncharted waters we're in, but it makes me sad as a young Guyanese with oil being so close to the first production. I expect our beautiful country, Guyana, in a very short space of time to be looked at by the world as a first world country. That is my dream for our beautiful country. What is happening right now, I really am disappointed in, and it is my It is just unfortunate that we're in this position. Where we go from
Tracy,
here,
let me just say something else. She mentioned the oil, but I'm just saying, right? To date, right, with the forest oil due next year, there is no government plan nor no PPP plan on how the money will be spent over the next 5 years. So now, as a youth, as a young person, everybody is out campaigning, oh, vote for us, vote for us. But I'm yet to, they're not giving us anything. What exactly are we voting us? You're not giving us anything.
Well, I think we're going to get to that. There have been talks about what the oil will do or where it will go, but nothing concrete.
Yeah, they have
but
been.
I think we're
They
going
have
to
been
get to
talks.
that.
They
Yeah.
have.
Well, we're going to touch on that. We have a few more minutes, but I just want to allow Mr. Hammond to finish, and we have a few more minutes.
Let's see where I left off. What I see for us, the fastest solution to bring an end to this atmosphere of uncertainty is for elections to be called via a proclamation by His Excellency, telling the nation that the earliest possible election date is the 2nd of March is not sufficient. We need to know, every Guyanese needs to know what date you are calling elections on. Then we require that you issue the proclamation. It is the only way to put an end to the madness. We are already outside of our constitution. Do not allow this period of uncertainty to continue for too long. And what I will say is that I am certain that once the proclamation for elections has been issued, that I expect all Guyanese to execute their constitutional right and go to the polls and vote. Let your voices be heard. Whichever political party you support, you go out there and you put your X on that place.
Yes.
James, you want to say something?
No, I think it was that we wrong Robin, and I think I did my bit. Lachi did her bit, you did your bit. So I would not provide any counters to anyone would have said. If there's some fresh issue, I would speak on it, but I would not be countering what anybody said.
Melissa, you wanted to make a point.
No, I was saying, James was, she was saying to everybody, oh, go out and vote, and she was encouraging them to do, exercise your constitutional right. But this is what I will say to the youth. Be very, very educated. Oil and gas sector, be educated about the manifesto, listen to what these the opposition and what the current administration is campaigning on. Listen to them, because election time, everything is promise you everything but the moon and the star. And then come after you put them in office, it's then a fight, and it's then a fight to get things done. So I think this is the mother of all elections, and I will say to you, be very, very, very careful on how you vote. Be educated. Try as much to read. Be educated on the issues. Be educated on everything that is happening right now, that is going to happen right now. This is very, 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 very important that our youths are educated. And I just want to say, I think it's very, very important that the members of the opposition and this current administration take the time to educate the youths on elections, on their plans, on exactly what is happening, or exactly what they plan on doing. I think it's very, very important that they have somebody that is willing to go out there and do this for the youths, because I think educating them and having them know exactly what is happening, what is it that is going on, that's the only way that we'll be able to have them to make the right decision as it comes to who they want to see the country moving forward with.
Well, it's interesting that you said that for the political parties to educate all voters, because sometimes that's not in the best interest of politics,
It's
educating people
I understand that's
on
not,
issues
and I also
all of
understand
that.
that that's
And I
not the
say
best
that for
interest
the
of political parties.
politicians. But I just want to raise something really quickly because we have some other guests that will be joining us. The issue of race, because we're basically in elections mode. Now, a lot of the times, this Guyana is known for this. Some people have argued with me that no, it's something that we promote. But we know that a lot of our political leaders, they push the race line when it's around election times, and we've been living forever. We live all before elections. We live so well with our neighbors, our friends, and then when we get into that mode, oh, you're Indian and you're African, and that comes up. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a sad thing. It is a very sad thing. And I have done a lot of testing. I go on programs in which there's a large contingent of other People's Progressive Party civic sympathizers, and I normally check their sites to see what they're promoting. And I must say, very, very from the onset, it's disappointing. The People's Progressive Party civic, I would lay blame squarely at their feet. And any Guyanese could check their sites, check their blogs, and you will see the kind of rabid racism that they encourage. Our party, the Party for National Unity and Alliance for Change, I've always said we are about inclusive governance. We are about all six races. We are about all the political parties working together for the good of the
James,
country.
you may say that, and I understand that you are, but we cannot stifle our conscience that all blame should be laid at the foot of the PPP for racism alone. Because me being a journalist, and this is both sides, and I know what it was like when the PPP, they were in power, how Afro-Guyanese felt, me being mixed Guyanese, how they felt. And then when President Granger won, we had my African brothers and sisters saying this is our time. And that was as a result of hurt as well. But we cannot stifle our conscience. It's important that we acknowledge the truth that it's both sides. But go ahead.
I'm not
Both sides.
I'm not starting. Let me finish. I'll insist that I finish my point now.
Of course.
Because it's very dear to me. I have seen, and I've witnessed the acts of racism from the other side. And it is something that I must say. When I say that I've seen it for them, I've seen it from them. That has been your experience to see from the other side. I will not deny, in good conscience, I will not deny if someone said, well, they had a racist encounter from someone who supported the coalition government. I cannot deny that. That has been their experience. But all I'm saying is this here. Our problems with race, and I gave the example of how we were brought up. I was brought up in a culture from the Northwest where I did not know I was black till I come to town. I did not know but just black and Indian thing. I come to town and met that. Growing up in the Northwest, we all were one. And when I go to the Northwest, the sentiments I hear from People Progressive Party civic people are that, you know, black man can't run things. Black man can't run the government. That's in the Northwest. So they have taken this racism thing to another level. And we need to stop it. I want to say Guyanese need to stop it. Because this country, and I said this and I said this over and over again, for me, we're all one. We all came here. It is now ours. It doesn't belong to the African more than the Indian or the Amerindian or the Chinese or the European. We're all here now. And I don't think that we should continue to allow elections to separate us. And if you look at the messaging, which party always takes you back to the 60s and the 50s as if everything happened against them? Which party does that continually?
I think
James. Let me finish. That has always been a part of their culture. I've gone to school with politicians, the children of politicians at PP Civic, and all they could tell me is about what Burnham did, what this did. But we are in 2019, and we have to realize that the color of this skin here, underneath it, all of us are human beings. All of us are entitled to the resource of this country. And the Partnership for National Unity preaches that message over and over again. I do not condone racism in any way, shape, or form. I was married into two Indian families. So I don't know what is racism. I don't know what is it to be prejudiced. And I would urge all Guyanese to be the same. And I could say of a fact that Ms. Rahamat is the same. She does not see race. I could guarantee that. And if we could do it as a younger generation, as our generation, why can't the older heads and the bigger heads and those elders let go of that past? Let go of it and let us move forward.
But
You know,
James,
so this elections, I think we should all decide to vote about issues. We should all decide to vote on issues and not race.
Yeah.
Let us examine the track record of the parties. Forget about race. If you feel that this party or this candidate is the best possible person for the job, vote for them. Do not vote for them simply because they're a part of National Unity, they're PNC, they're FC, or they're PP. Vote for the character, vote for integrity, vote for the people who we know could take Guyana forward.
Mr.
Now,
Hammond, you were about to make a point, and
good. So, I honestly think it is a naive statement to not acknowledge.
I just want to acknowledge Mr. Saisnaran. We're joined by him, and he's going to pitch in. But go ahead, Mr. Hammond.
Yeah. I think it's naive to not acknowledge that Guyana has a race problem. I know that, and I'm of the view that it is rooted in our history and a lot of events that have happened through the years, long before we came. And I will tell you personally, I do not read comments online. It is unfair to place the blame for the racial comments, the racial hatred that is being promulgated on the internet and social media right now at the foot of the opposition or any one particular political party. I have gotten so sick of the comments about coolie crab dog to the point where I no longer read the comments online. I refuse to, because when I read it, you know what, it doesn't upset me, but it makes me feel sad. Because I believe that we need to, as a nation, move forward and live what our motto is: one people, one nation, one destiny. It takes one person to start change. And I believe that a lot of the racial hatred being promulgated on social media is as a result of trolls. When you check the profile of these persons that are saying these hateful comments of both Afro-Guyanese and Indian Guyanese, they are from profiles that were created yesterday or the day after or the day before, and it is not an actual profile belonging to an individual, but it's a fake profile that is meant to put these hateful words to continue to hurt people who read it, and it gets into the psyche of people. We need to acknowledge that we have a problem, and we need to acknowledge that as a nation, we have to work together to stop it. And James is right, I see no race. All of my friends, my colleagues, we don't see race. When we sit and we talk, we don't talk down any race. That is not who we are as Guyanese. In fact, we don't see race. But it is unfortunate that there are still individuals out there who are still trying to pull this nation apart using race. And it should stop.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. I just want to acknowledge Mr. David Hines. He has joined us, and I'm going to just ask Melissa to weigh in quickly on this, and then we're going to be speaking.
I'm not going to be I'm not going to be long, Tracy, but I just want to say, if it's one thing that we can agree, both James and Lash, we can agree here tonight, is that we do not promote and condone racism whatsoever at no level. And what I want to add to what they say is that we as young people, we need to start holding our friends and our family accountable when you see them or when you hear them promoting racism in any shape or form. You need to hold them accountable. So if you feel as though your friend make a comment or a post that is you don't have to do it, you don't have to do it publicly, or you don't have to do it, but you have to let them know that, hey, I think that comment that you made or that post that you made is it's kind of promoting racism, and I think that it's right. We need to start holding our friends, holding our family accountable when we see them or when we hear them promoting racism.
Got it.
Just want, before anyone speaks, just a clarification. Mr.
James,
Hammett and I
what?
are on different sides.
James,
Mr. Hammett,
we're keeping you on.
we're on different sides, so we may disagree, but we're on the same side.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I say we can all agree on one thing here, is that we do not promote racism any shape or form.
Thank you all so very much. We're very, very thankful. Our response online has been really great. Ladies, thank you so much for contributing to the conversation. We appreciate it. And I'm just going to go over quickly now to Mr. Narayan, and we have Mr. Hines. Mr. James, I'm going to keep you on. Gentlemen, can you weigh in on the president's announcements? Your thoughts, because my guests who've been with me for about an hour now, the concern is the president has not named a date as yet still. So we're still waiting for a date. So we do not know when elections will be held. He said that is the soonest possible date. Mr. Hines, you can go first. Your thoughts?
Yes, the date has been named March 2nd. March 2nd has been named in the last half an hour or so. So we will be going to election on March 2nd. I think the president stood to his word. It has never been in doubt. He has made it very clear that once GCOM signal its readiness, that it will go to elections. I think what we've seen over the last few months is that we have had two approaches to get to where we are tonight. The first approach was the approach by the PPP, which was a strict constitutionalist approach, which said that elections should be held 3 months after a no-confidence vote, and the PPP stuck to that relentlessly, and it had its allies who stuck to that. The other side took a different approach. It says that, yes, elections must be constitutionally held 3 months after no confidence vote, but it pointed to Article 6.7, which is part of the same article, Article 6.6, which says elections must be held in 3 months. And then the very next section in that article says that, the date can be extended by a 2/3 majority. So the framers of the Constitution were envisioning that there could be obstacles to holding an election within 3 months. And so the president and his government were saying, look, in addition to that constitutional requirement of 3 months, we have another constitutional responsibility, and that is to hold elections, credible elections, when the Elections Commission signals that it's ready for them. So we have had those two competing approaches, one on strict constitutionalism and one that says, wait a minute, we have to have a signal that credible elections are being held. And it was the clash of those two constitutional requirements and the zero sum on both sides, because both sides held the ground. We have not come to this point. I think the president says that once I get that signal, elections will be held. Just asked me last week, when would I, if I were the president, I said March 1st. The president said March 2nd. We will have elections on March 2nd. And I think the country has breathed a sigh of relief, because I can tell you, I've been going through the villages on the on the coast of Guyana, along with the party that I belong to. We've been to about 19 villages. And I tell you, I can see the fatigue on the part of ordinary Guyanese who are getting a little bit frustrated with this thing playing out. So I think the first consequence of naming a date is that it has brought some relief to ordinary people who have to go about their lives on a day-to-day basis. They're not political pundits who study this thing and don't get tired with it. People want to go on with their lives, and sometimes these heavy political pounding have an effect on them.
Got it. Mr. Ryan, your thoughts?
Hi, good night, all. I beg to differ. I'm sorry, my friend David. I beg to differ because I'm reading the statement, and the statement basically says, and I'm quoting now, I'm pleased to announce that after discussions with the chairman of GCOM and with my cabinet, the earliest possible date for the holding of general and regional elections will be on Monday, the 2nd of March 2020. The earliest possible date, with a caveat, if done statement. I'm a logician. I'm big into logics. And there's something called an if done statement in my world. If this happens, then that will happen. What happens in a normal Commonwealth democracy is a president makes a proclamation. He dissolves his parliament and he moves and says, this is the date I shall meet the people along with the opposition. That wasn't done tonight. This is all subterfuge and deception. Leadership is, John Kenneth Galbraith made it very clear about leadership. A good leader is one who's willing to confront the great anxieties of his people. And Dr. Hines spoke about the fatigue on the ground. I've seen that too. And that is why I'm differing, because nobody's confronting the great anxieties of the normal Guyanese. Politicians are all very wealthy people in Guyana, maybe except for James, right? But I'm just joking. But politicians, they are not the ones who are suffering from this crisis. The people who are really suffering are the people that David Hines was talking about, the people in the villages, the people in the wards of Georgetown. And nobody's taking that willingness to confront this great anxiety. And therefore, I believe this if-done statement, it is a setup, because former President Bharat Jagdeo made it absolutely clear in a follow-up statement that, and he said, this government has spent billions of dollars in untendered activities, meaning they didn't go through tendering. And they're using this opportunity to go back to Parliament to regularize an irregularity retroactively. That cannot happen. I am not saying whether we are going to deal with that, but what has to happen is a president has to account to his people. He has to envision a future for them. He has to relate to them. He has to invent this future for them by bringing these elections to the people. And he has to make sense of this situation. Nothing that Mr. Granger tonight said made sense to me.
But isn't this, we were all discussing before you gentlemen came on, that it is a process, and that is what Mr. James, he was explaining as well. And this is sort of the first step, even though many Guyanese believe that it is a delayed process.
Do I come in now?
Yeah, Mr. James, you can come in.
Yeah, good night again. I didn't think the gentleman may have heard is that the president cannot issue a proclamation and dissolve the National Assembly at this juncture. If he does that, then elections must be held within 3 months. And that goes within GCOM's 2020 February. So what SACE is proposing is not logical. The president, the government needs to reconvene the National Assembly, put the date on the floor of the National Assembly. It is ratified by the National Assembly, and then we go to the election. That is logical.
Why, James? Okay, so if you want to bring back your parliament, that's fine. Bring it back.
It has to be brought back.
The point is, the opposition has said they're not going back to parliament.
And secondly, there were the appropriations bill of 2019 would have already given what the spending was for 2019. There's those monies were available through the ministries, etc. Are available for spending.
Money here. We're talking process.
There is not anything wrong with spending monies for 2019. That appropriation
by not tendering, there is a lot wrong when you don't
government. I'm being interrupted all night.
What you're fighting, James? You're fighting.
Yeah. So there's nothing illegal with government spending monies from the 2019 budget. And government has already stated. The president has stated that they're not issuing new contracts. that they're not going to be doing anything outside of the caretaker status that the CTJ pronounced upon. They have already said they're working within the limitations of a caretaker government. So to just accuse the government of spending and tendering out and doing things nilly-willy, I think that is not true. That is not what is happening right now. The president is following.
James, how can you continue to function business as usual according to what you're saying, budgetary allocations, when you are in caretaker mode?
Mr. Hamad,
How is that even possible?
as I said before, these monies were already allotted. These monies were already in these agencies, in these budgetary agencies for spending. You can't shut the country down. These monies were already there in place. There is not new monies that are now going.
James, I'm agreeing with you.
All right.
The Ministry of Public Health.
James, I'm agreeing
All
with you on
right.
this.
Still has to run the hospital.
Notwithstanding the passing of the no confidence motion. That is what I'm saying, that the government remains there for the sole purpose of ensuring that elections are held. And elections are held within the constitutional time frame. Now, I am unaware of any principle that permits any Guyanese or any member of government or any member of the opposition to relax the provisions of the Constitution.
Mr. Hamad, with all due respect, are you saying that the government, the Ministry of Public Health, should not, if there's monies for the purchasing of medical supplies, life-saving drugs, it just says, you know what, we're not spending any of these monies within these 3 months. Nothing is being spent. For example, the pontoon, the boat running to the harbor bridge. Are you saying the Ministry of Public Infrastructure not draw down from the budgeted money?
That's not what I said.
We are in September of 2019.
Thank you. In 2019, that means the money
require that elections be held at least 3 months, 90 days after the passage of the no confidence motion. We are long past that deadline.
Can I come in?
Use of the government having to spend money to continue with the allocations made in the 2019 budget ought never to have arisen because government.
So let me bring in Dr. Hines here.
Within the 3 months time frame. I find it difficult to, and I apologize, because I find it difficult to understand that we are looking beyond the constitutional time frame. We are looking beyond that time frame, and we are operating as business as usual.
And let me bring,
can I come in?
ladies, gentlemen, so let me bring Mr. Hines in. Let me bring Mr. Hines to weigh in, and then we're gonna continue. Yes, Mr. Hines.
I came onto the program and I heard the participants speaking so eloquently about being non-racial and non-racist, and I felt so good. And here we are, hunkering down in our racial narratives. The narrative of strict constitutionalism is the narrative that was advanced by the East Indian Party. The narrative of relying on GCOM was advanced by the other party that is grounded in African Guyanese community. And here we are, 4 or 5 of us, and we're not trying at all to see how we can merge the two narratives and come to a sane understanding to work for the country. The hunkering down have to be just there. That we are not racist. Here's the thing about racism. Racism is not about any individual. Racism is a structural concept. And we adopt racist tropes and narratives out of policies that are advanced over a period of time. And sometimes we don't realize it. Here we are, as I said, 4 or 5 of us. We have 2 narratives before us. We are behaving as though the other narrative that comes from half of the population don't make any sense. And we're saying, oh my God, I can't understand this. Well, you've got to understand that when you live in an ethnically divided society, you have to at least have some consideration for what the other side is saying. And try to see, here we are supposedly commentators. Let us not try to see both sides. At the end of the day, we've got to have election. The president says elections are going to be held by March the 2nd, and we're sitting here parsing his words. We don't feel that he's reliable. We're not giving him the benefit of the doubt. And all that this is doing is pouring up the very racism that you all were just saying you all don't promote.
Mr. Naran?
I just want to say, as an old man in this program, I just want to say that when I hear younger people parrot this nonsense that they don't see race, and then the very next minute start repeating racist narratives, I don't see where we're going with that.
I don't know, but you're the moderator. Did you hear anybody talk about race? Because I didn't hear, but maybe we're having different conversations. But I didn't hear. I heard James was talking about money issue. I saw Ms. Rahman Ahmad responded on a constitutional issue. So clearly, I don't know.
One doesn't have to use the word race to know that
Heinz was talking about. But
the point that you want to make, Mr. Naran, the point that you'd like to make.
The point that I'd like to make is basically the merging of the narrative can happen, but we have to follow.
Well, let's do it now. We have the opportunity, sis.
But we have to follow processes. And if you read the judgment made by the CCJ, it says in paragraph 77, the CCJ basically says Article 106 invest in the head of state and implicitly in GCOM the responsibility to impact on the time elections must be held.
We're past that.
We are. So, Mr. Naran, do you have confidence in the president with the announcement that he's made? Do you have confidence?
Why bring that up if not to stir up negative sentiments against the president?
But let me make the CCJ's comment. This is not my comment. I'm quoting.
I think we touched on this initially. So what I'm asking now is, are we going to give the president the benefit of the doubt?
No, but listen to this point.
We're going back and forth on all of these. Make the point, though, Mr. Naran.
Let me just finish this point. The CCJ said, if the head of state and GCOM refuses to exercise their responsibility with integrity and within the spirit of that Constitution, then, and the spirit of the Constitution says 3 months.
We're past 3 months. We are now 9 months.
Imprisoned. This nation is now being imprisoned for 6 of those 9 months. How does a nation get out of this imprisonment?
By calling an election date, and that's what the president has done. So let's move on to that.
Mr. Naran, are you going to give the president the benefit of the doubt that we will have elections by March 2nd?
Well, what are we reading? The statement is right here, and it says that the man has committed to do something if something happens.
So you don't believe, do you believe that we're going to have elections by March 2nd?
I don't believe there'll be March 2nd
Mr.
elections.
Do you believe that we're going to have elections by March 2nd?
It's not my belief, but the president has not stated definitively that he will call elections on that date. He said, and I quote, and we all watched the video, that the earliest possible date is March 2nd. Now, I cannot say what His Excellency is thinking. I can only tell you those are his words, and those words do not amount to him saying the elections will be on that date. He said it's the earliest possible
Dr. Heinz, do you believe that that we will have elections by then?
Absolutely, and I will tell you something as someone who is in proximity to the government. That government has decided to hold elections in December. And at the PPP, when the CCJ said marry principle with practicality, gone and sat down with the president in consultation with GCOM, we would have been going to elections in December. The PPP and some of its acolytes have continued to hold the process to make this point that the government is illegal. And we are hearing it from these two panelists here tonight. All they want to do is to show that this government is illegal, that it's in breach of the Constitution, that it's worthless, and they are not cognizant of the very thing that they were talking about earlier, how that feeds in the ethnic thing that we are trying to avoid. Because
Mr.
what we're
James.
seeing is the two sides are not willing to reach across. Give the man the benefit of the doubt for the first time in 9 years. Oh my God.
Mr. James, do you believe that we're going to have elections by then?
Of course, I believe by March 2nd, 2020, there will be elections. The government has given, the president has given a commitment for March 2nd as the earliest possible date. That means it cannot go, he will not go past March 2nd.
Okay.
So he's simply, as I said before, he's simply saying, let me give me an opportunity to meet with the opposition, my government to meet with the opposition in the National Assembly, where we should meet, give us the opportunity to cross the divide, to bridge the divide, and agree and show Guyana that we were able to put Guyana first, and agree on March 2nd. That's all the president is saying. And I'm saying the president is very benevolent, he's very tactful, he's very deliberate, and it's a decision that all Guyana must commend.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Narayan, where do we go from here? What is next in your opinion? Because you're not satisfied with the president's announcement.
Well, ideally, what would have been the situation is that leadership has four functionalities. Leadership has a vision and functionality, a relating functionality to the people's needs, inventing that future for the people, and most importantly, making sense of the current conditions. On all four score, unfortunately, Mr. Granger has failed. And this is why I'm saying this. Because earliest, I don't know, maybe I went to the wrong school, because my definition of earliest, and I'm going to quote from the Webster Dictionary, so I might be going to the wrong school, but earliest has a definition, and I know what it is, but I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to understand that nobody was playing with my mind. And earliest basically means if you're in a race, this is the starting time of that race. If the president has said the latest possible date for election will be March 2nd, I would have been agreeing with James Bond exactly that yes, we will be having elections on March 2nd. But he said the earliest possible. That is when the clock starts ticking on his election timetable. GCOM has done his job. So let me make this clear. GCOM was put in a bind, and GCOM has delivered itself from that bind. GCOM was given the basket to fetch water to deliver an election in a very unreasonable situation with house to house and all kinds of confusion. However, commendation to GCOM. They have delivered a timeline. It's not the most favorable of timeline, but they have said, we can do this in such a timeline. They've told the nation what can be done, what cannot be done, and rational people says, okay, we will work with the situation. What the president has not done is done exactly what GCOM has done. Constitutionally, during this period, nobody else matters but two organizations. The office of the head of state and the office of GCOM. Everybody else, so when people are trying to drag in the opposition and the PPP, and they're irrelevant to this whole debate. This debate, the decision makers to move this entire process forward, so you ask me what I see, is that the two arms of decision making have to make decisions. GCOM has done its job, they've made a decision. The ball is now in Mr. Granger's court. He has to make a decision. You got to sign two pieces of paper and make a decision. That's as simple as that. This don't need all this rigmarole and going around. I understand there's an undercurrent. I know Dr. Hines talked about that issue. We talked about the narrative and the merging of the narrative. And I understand. And I feel for my people that we have so much undercurrent pain. I really, really do. I wish I can find a solution. It's a difficult thing because it's a historical situation that's coming from way back in the 60s and maybe even the 50s. And it has to be solved, and we have to confront this anxiety and fix it. But this is not the time to fix this. This is the time to become leaders and do the right thing for Guyana. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Dr. Hines, where do we go from here?
Well, we have to prepare for a long election campaign, which actually started in December last year. a kind of pre-campaign, and now we're into the real campaign. I've been looking back, and we've never had such a long campaign. It's going to be 5 months and more. And given the way in which our elections have been fought in the past, a long campaign is pregnant with a lot of anxieties, and we cannot pretend that given the importance of these elections, we'll have to do a very good job at holding back sentiments and holding back emotions. And I hope people like myself and my companions here tonight can recognize that responsibility that we have when we are making our comments. I do not want to see my country go up in ethnic smoke again. I've seen that too much in my lifetime. And there's a time for us to say, stop all the politicking. Let's now get down to business and try to prepare our country to get over this hurdle, because it is going to be a hurdle that we have to get over. And we have to begin to tone down the vitriol. And we have to show our people that those of us who they have invested in, and we read a few books and get a few titles behind our names, that we should discharge our responsibility to our country and begin to speak with reason, not to parse little words that says it's doing, or parse this little article in the Constitution. Let us understand that this election is going to be crucial. We have got to create the conditions. We can do it with the least possible dislocation of our country.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to thank you all for being with us and for sharing your thoughts on the president's announcement. The president announced, as you're seeing in the title, that the earliest possible date for election is March 2nd. And again, thank you to our viewers, everyone who weighed in online, and to Globespan for giving us this platform that we can have conversations of this nature. You all did such a fantastic job, and you were able to inform everyone, including myself, more about what this means for us. And so we appreciate you very, very much. And this is where we will say goodbye for now. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Good night. Thank you again, guys.
Good night.
And girl.